South African anti-apartheid activist Ahmed Kathrada, who once shared a prison cell with Nelson Mandela, has died. He was 87 years old. Kathrada was hospitalized earlier this month for surgery related to blood clotting in the brain. Now, in 1963, he was arrested alongside Mandela and found guilty on charges of conspiracy and sabotage under South Africa's apartheid regime. Kathrada remained politically active and has been spearheading human rights initiatives in the country. Marvin Meintjies joins me now from Johannesburg. He is the former deputy editor of the Sunday Times newspaper in South Africa. Thanks so much for joining us. Though he wasn't internationally celebrated the way Mandela was, he was fundamental to the anti-apartheid struggle and the ANC, for that matter. What do you think his legacy will be?
He wasn't as well known as Nelson Mandela, and I think that's partly because his character was a little bit more reserved. He was a humble and gentle warrior as opposed to a firebrand. And his legacy is incredibly important for us here in South Africa and internationally. He will be remembered as a principled leader, a humble man who gave of himself freely. His sacrifice, spending 26 years as a political prisoner. He never sought to use that as a means of leveraging power, high office, or great financial reward. He was a very principled and humble leader and a very private man as well. His legacy for us is basically, it forces us to look at ourselves, examine ourselves, and when these things happen, when we lose a member of that great generation, we always reflect and wonder if we're living up to their legacy. Are we worthy of their sacrifice, or are we showing that we're worthy of that sacrifice? And I think that's the legacy of Ahmed Kathrada.
And he, like many of the struggle leaders, ultimately ended up criticizing his party, the ANC, and particularly Jacob Zuma, over so many accusations of corruption. How was he left feeling about the party that was so central to his life?
He was outspoken in a sense, a very private man, but outspoken when he needed to be, when he felt that the principles that the ANC stood for and the anti-apartheid struggle encapsulated were being undermined and being suborned for the benefit of a few. And again, he stands in stark contrast to some of what we're seeing today. He wrote an open letter to President Jacob Zuma in 2016, shortly after the Constitutional Court ruled on the Nkandla upgrades, which cost many millions, hundreds of millions of rands, calling on President Jacob Zuma to step down. He said, submit to the will of the people and resign. Clearly, President Zuma has not heeded that call, but he was also outspoken about the alleged undue influence a very wealthy family here, the Gupta family, have over President Jacob Zuma and some members of his cabinet. Kathrada, his foundation, wrote a strongly worded letter to the Secretary General of the ANC saying, basically, it's time for you to correct the course, self-correct, or you're never going to regain the trust of the people. So although he had retreated from public life, he came out when he needed to. He felt he needed to intervene and did just that.
Marvin, quickly if you can, he also took particular interest in the Palestinian struggle. How do you think he helped the Palestinian cause?
Well, the Kathrada Foundation has been an active and vocal supporter of Israeli Apartheid Week here in South Africa. He's also had been campaigning for the release of Marwan Barghouti, a Palestinian activist who's been jailed in Israel. As a former political prisoner himself, he felt that cause deeply. There is a kinship and solidarity between the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa and the Palestinian struggle. The leaders like Kathrada saw in the Palestinian struggle a reflection of our own struggle here in South Africa, and were mindful of the fact that the various boycotts, campaigns, disinvestment campaigns, sanction campaigns played an important part in bringing an end to apartheid. And so they gave their full weight, Kathrada particularly gave his full weight to the BDS campaign. It was just one example of that continued solidarity and that continuing activism in his latter years.
Okay, Marvin Meintjies, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us from Johannesburg.